Welcome biology students to the second section of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. In this video we are going to be talking about the process called cellular respiration. Now photosynthesis and cellular respiration, remember, are simply inverse reactions, but when we talk about cellular respiration, we're talking about in the mitochondria. The vast majority of this takes place in the mitochondria, so just kind of keep that in mind. So these are kind of the basic things we want you to know. We want you to be able to describe the process. We want you to identify the two locations. Now, most of it occurs in the mitochondria, but there is some that occurs in the cytosol. Is what this says is really the cytoplasm is often how we refer to that. And then why do they go through respiration? So what we need to know is, what's the point? Why do we do this? Well, we eat food, and we eat food so we don't die. But when we eat food, it provides us with this chemical energy that we're going to use in order to do our daily things, to do our daily activities, our hearts to beat, us to run down the hallway, to get to biology class, things like that. We, as animals, cannot make energy from the sun. We need to eat other things. But our body can synthesize new molecules from food. Okay, and this food is what we often generically refer to as chemical energy. Okay, so it's energy stored in chemical bonds. The idea is food becomes ATP, which then we use for everyday life into our bodies to function. So when we talk about cellular respiration, our goal is to slowly release energy. Okay, we don't want it to be all of a sudden like throwing a match in a bucket of gasoline, and it's going to release energy very quickly. We don't want that. We want a slow, gradual release. Otherwise, we eat lunch, boom, we convert all that energy into ATP. We can't keep it, and we are dragging, and we can't make it till dinner time. So the idea is, by slowly releasing it, we lose less energy as heat. You are 98.6 degrees because heat is a byproduct of cellular respiration. The major food molecule that generically that we talk about is glucose, C6H12O6. There's other sugar molecules, but that's just kind of the generic. So glucose is our food source, and that's what plants make, right? So we're going to take glucose and oxygen in order to make carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. And this ATP is energy that is stored in our cells. So how do photosynthesis and cellular respiration relate? Again, they are inverse reactions. What comes out of one goes into the other. So if you look, oxygen and glucose goes into the mitochondria, and as a byproduct, water and carbon dioxide comes out, which then is used in photosynthesis, which then produces oxygen and glucose that we use, and then it goes in a cycle and it keeps repeating. The difference is the energy. Light energy goes into photosynthesis. Chemical energy comes out in the form of ATP in cellular respiration. The reactants of one are the products of the other. So cellular respiration and photosynthesis, they're so closely related that as long as you remember one of the equations, you just flip it over. We expect you to be able to write out the balanced chemical reaction with these sixes in them. They're all sixes except for glucose. We expect you to be able to write out the chemical equation for both of these. The key is, if you know one, you just flip the other, right? If you know one, you flip the other. The only difference is the types of energy, but that is exactly it. So carbon dioxide, water, and energy goes in to photosynthesis. Glucose and oxygen comes out. In cellular respiration, glucose and oxygen go in. Carbon dioxide, water, and energy come out, right? So these really are going here, and then these go like that. They're inverse reactions. Some of the big differences between cellular respiration and photosynthesis is plants, algae, and some bacteria go through photosynthesis. However, all organisms go through cellular respiration. All organisms go through cellular respiration. That means all organisms, including plants, need oxygen. They need glucose in order to live. The thing is, plants make their own glucose and oxygen. Cellular respiration and photosynthesis occur in different organelles or different locations. Photosynthesis occurs in chloroplasts in plants, where generally most of cellular respiration, we just generically say, occurs in the mitochondria. Okay, cellular respiration occurs all the time. So cellular respiration, we often say, requires oxygen and glucose in order to take place, and that's so it is slowly releasing energy. Okay, it's a way to slowly release energy and maximize the amount of ATP that our body is going to make, which is an energy molecule that our cells use. Your muscle cells use ATP in order to move. They need that in order to move. So they take glucose, form of chemical energy, and they convert it into ATP, a different form of chemical energy. Some organisms go through photosynthesis and they create their own glucose, while we have to eat our glucose. Okay, why do we go through cellular respiration? So we have enough energy for us to carry out various tasks of life, to move, for our heart to beat, for us to breathe. If we don't get ATP, our cells are not going to be able to function, and then we die. All organisms need to convert glucose and ATP in order to survive. That means all organisms go through cellular respiration. I've said that a few times, notice. So where does cellular respiration occur? It's really two locations. We often generically say in the mitochondria. However, it also, a small portion of it does occur in the cytoplasm. There's two different types of cellular respiration. We tend to focus more on we tend to not focus on anaerobic respiration that much. We tend to focus more heavily on aerobic respiration, and that occurs when oxygen is present or is available. Okay, so we talk about anaerobic versus aerobic workouts. When we are doing something aerobically, we are walking is an example of an aerobic workout. When we go for a long, slow run is an example of an aerobic workout. We have plenty of oxygen in order for cellular respiration to occur. If we were to sprint as hard and as fast as we possibly can, we exert all of our energy as hard as we can, that's when we are anaerobic. And anaerobic is when oxygen is not available. Okay, so what's the major differences between these? Well, again, oxygen versus no oxygen. Anaerobic, no oxygen, and the idea is as a net product result, we only get 2 ATPs. Is that a lot? I'm glad you asked. If we have plenty of oxygen, for every 1 glucose molecule that we use, we can produce 36 ATPs. 2 versus 36. So this production of this chemical reaction of aerobic respiration, cellular respiration occurring when you have plenty of oxygen, we can produce 18 times more ATP than if we don't have oxygen. So if we run and we sprint as hard as we possibly can, we can only do that for a short period of time until our legs will collapse and we can't hold ourselves anymore. We should be able to walk for a very long period of time because we have plenty of ATPs in order for our muscles to keep functioning. So anaerobic respiration, again, anaerobic means without oxygen. It only creates these 2 ATPs, is relatively inefficient. This in us as humans is called lactic acid fermentation. And the idea is if you were to sprint, that burning in your legs, they often associate it to be with lactic acid. Okay, so in humans, in some animals, they go through something called lactic acid fermentation. It's a process of anaerobic without oxygen that we only produce 2 ATP molecules for every 1 glucose molecule. And in other organisms, specifically yeast and some bacteria, they do something called alcoholic fermentation. And alcoholic fermentation is exactly what it sounds like. It's a way that we can go through and produce alcohol, such as beer and wine. Okay, so that's the production of alcohol. Again, only 2 ATP molecules. It's how bread is made. That's why we get those bubbles in our bread when we let it rise. Aerobic respiration, way more efficient. 36 ATP molecules. Every one glucose molecule goes through and creates 36 ATPs. Much more energy for organisms. This is the most common form of cellular respiration found in plants and animals. Okay, but this requires oxygen. Aerobic, oxygen, aerobic needs oxygen. Okay, that's why we need to breathe or respire. Okay, aerobic respiration, like I said, 18 times the energy of anaerobic respiration. Much, much, much more energy efficient. If you have any questions, please let us know. Have a great day, guys.